Now, about this anti-Israel bias, I tell you what, the United Nations is rotten with it. Right now, we're seeing so much excitement, aren't we, about Syria? You know, how a handsome young man talking peace and tolerance is the new leader of the country after his little army, a jihadist army, toppled dictator Bashar al-Assad. Now, forget that this guy used to be with the Islamic State, used to swear allegiance to al-Qaeda, used to say, first Syria, and then we're going for Israel, which his fighters, by the way, still want.
بإذن الله لا نصل فقط دمشق بل إن القدس تنتظرنا بإذن الله تعالى.
وكذلك بإذن الله وكذلك المسجد الأقصى وكذلك مسجد محمد وكذلك الكعبة ندخلها بإذن الله. تكبير على القوم الكافرين.
The Al-Aqsa Mosque is talking about, that's the one in Jerusalem that they're going to come for. Forget also the killing that we're already seeing all over the internet, but which I won't show you here. But a warning, what I will show you is just as distressing perhaps. I mean, you've got these jihadists dragging off people to be executed without trial. They're also now attacking Kurdish forces in the country's east. You forget all that. The ABC today quoted the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Syria, all optimistic about these guys.
The reality is, so far, is that the HDS and also the other armed groups have been sending good messages to the Syrian people. We have also seen, reassuring things on the ground.
But this same guy and our ABC were worried about Israel, which doesn't trust what's coming, has just blown up the Syrian jets, the naval boats, the ammunition dumps, the chemical weapons factories, all abandoned by the Syrian regime. And it's also seized Mount Hermon to stop future Syrian forces from overlooking Israel from that much greater height.
Something which is causing concern, however, is Israel's action.
We are continuing to see Israeli movements and bombardments into Syrian territory. This needs to stop.
Nothing Israel does to protect itself is right. While Syrians, they can murder each other in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands and no real worries. There's no marches in the street. Joining me is General Jack Keane, who was Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army and a four-star general. He's now chairman for the excellent Institute for the Study of War. General Keane, great to see you again. Israel was criticised for fighting back against Hamas. It was criticised for fighting back against Hezbollah. It was criticised for striking back at Iran. Now it's being criticised for striking in Syria, destroying all the abandoned weapons, jets, naval ships, chemical weapon sites, all left behind by the Syrian regime when it collapsed. What's your take on this part of the story of Syria?
What has happened, obviously, with the Syrian Arab Army, they have deserted those bases. The soldiers literally have gone home, and their arsenal of ammunition and weapons are in place. And who can get access to that? Radical Islamists in the country, not just the one that is taking over the country, but there's other groups as well that can get their hands on those organizations, on that equipment. And that's what Israel is after. So they're destroying as much as that is possible. But the primary focus has been on the chemical weapons. They certainly don't want weapons of mass destruction to get in the hands of radicals, and they're about destroying that. And I think it's absolutely the right thing to do.
So the Syrian dictator, Bashar al-Assad, the war criminal, has fled Syria. The new leadership of the country, or most of it anyway, is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which used to be an al-Qaeda offshoot, still listed as a terrorist group. It says it's now much more moderate, it's pluralistic, everyone's going to have a part in the new Syria. But General, I've seen plenty of clips so far of opponents being shot in the street, scores being settled, chants of jihadists saying they're going to come for Israel next. Are Syrians safer under these people? Is Israel safer?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. I mean, applying the term moderate, to a radical Islamic group whose history is a derivative of al-Qaeda and whose leader, al-Jilani, was a member of ISIS, I think is a bit of a stretch. Have they, in the last few years, moved away from hardcore jihadism in terms of the communities that they were in charge of, while the Syrian Arab Army was still ruling most of Syria? Yes, they have. But that doesn't mean that we're going to have some kind of moderate organization now running Syria. I think everybody in the region has to be on their guard in terms of what is happening here. It's why the Israelis have taken prudent action. They have physically moved into Syria, into a buffer zone, as they call it, their words, beyond the Golan Heights. Why? They want to make certain that they are sending a message to anyone there who wants to take advantage of this situation.
And let's take a step further back in this big picture. I wonder whether in fact suddenly Vladimir Putin, the dictator of Russia, has now had a catastrophe happen to him. He was helping to prop up Syria. He's lost 2 bases there unless the jihadists give them back. His power there is gone. Turkey has taken over. That's a huge humiliation. At the very same time, we had Donald Trump meeting with the Ukrainian president in Paris in a meeting organised by the French Prime Minister. Very warm meetings. Twice he greeted Zelensky very warmly. And it seems to me that Trump now is going to look at Putin and see him as a loser and might actually back Ukraine in a way that we weren't expecting only a couple of weeks ago. What say you?
Yeah, I think that there's been a complete misread of Donald Trump on Ukraine. I mean, obviously, one of his objectives is to end the war. And he has acolytes, around him sometimes speak for him and take that and interpret what that means. And we have a lot of loose language that, Trump is going to come in and cut Ukraine loose and abandon them. That is not going to happen. Is there an objective here to get a ceasefire, to stop the fighting? Everybody wants that to be the case. Zelensky, he didn't want war in 2014. He didn't want it in 2022 when his country was invaded. And he certainly doesn't want it now, if you listen to him. And I just spoke to his chief of staff, Yermak, who carries huge influence last week. I had in a meeting I had with him. And certainly, yes, they certainly want the killing to stop. But at the same time, they know that any temporary ceasefire or agreement that Putin agrees to is only temporary. He will violate that as he did the Minsk agreement, and he has never given up on his aspirations to topple the government in Kyiv and take over the country. That is his goal. It is still his goal. And if we put together a deal with him, we have to recognize that that is where he's moving. There's much we can do to make certain that going forward, there is some guarantees for his security, Ukraine's security, and we send those signals very strongly to the Russians. I say again, despite any agreement that Putin makes, he's not giving up on his goal to topple the government in Kyiv and take the country over.
Yes, I can't believe that Donald Trump would deal a very weakened and humiliated Putin back in the game by propping him up and cutting the ground from under Ukraine's feet. I can't see that happening. General Keane, once again, masterly overview of a very complicated terrain. I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done on this show this year. You've given us tremendous insights right from a very well-informed position. So thank you so much and have a great Christmas.
Yeah, I've enjoyed every part of it, Andrew, and I've enjoyed talking to your audience. Merry Christmas.